Great. Good morning. All right. So I'll call this regular meeting of the Desert Water Agency's Board of Directors. Call the meeting to order on July 2nd, 2024 at 8 o'clock in the morning. Some housekeeping for those that are attending virtually. If you could mute your devices so as not to interrupt us during the meeting, unless, of course, you're going to be speaking at public comment. Also, for those of us in the room, if we could do the same to silence our phones, etc. I will be calling on directors in the following roll call order: Director Gracia, Director Bloomer, Secretary Treasurer McKenna, Vice President Bowman, and President Ortega. All votes will be conducted via roll call. And with that, we can move to item 2, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. And if I could ask Director Gracia to lead us this morning.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. So item 3 will be the roll call. Ms. Baca, if you could conduct that, please.
Director Gracia,
Present.
Director Bloomer,
Present.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Present.
Vice President Bowman,
Here.
and President Ortega.
For items that are not listed here on the agenda today, but under the purview of the Desert Water Agency. So if there are members of the public, either virtually or in the room, that would like to speak, either if you're attending virtually, please raise your hand through the Zoom feature or come to the podium. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. And as provided in the Brown Act, the board is prohibited from acting on items that are not listed on today's agenda. Ms. Baca, have we received any public comment via email or otherwise?
None have been received.
Thank you. Are there members of the public who would like to speak on an item not on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to item 5, which is for public comment on items that are listed on today's agenda. Again, we ask you to keep these your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on one of the items on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item, which is item 6. It's our consent calendar. We have items listed here that are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by one motion of the board without discussion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a board member requests a specific item to be discussed and or removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Are there any items on today's consent calendar that one of my fellow directors would like to remove and have further discussion? It doesn't seem so, so I'll look for a motion to accept the consent calendar as presented.
I move with that we approve item 6 consent calendar as presented.
Thank you. I'll look for a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. So we have a first from Director Gracia, a second from Director Bloomer, and I believe we can have a roll call vote now.
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 7 is a public hearing. This item is the request adoption of ordinance number 78 entitled Establishing Compensation and Reimbursement Expenses for Directors. I will ask that we begin by having our finance director Sines give her report.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Back on August 1st, 2023, the board adopted ordinance number 76, amending section 1 of the ordinance 64, which established compensation for each day of service by directors on behalf of the agency. This amendment fixed the compensation of $406.12 for each day of service until subsequently revised by ordinance. Beginning back in May 2020, staff began to perform an annual benefits and compensation survey for the Board of Directors and presented it to the Finance Committee in conjunction with the annual budget. The Finance Committee then makes a recommendation as to whether that item should be taken to the full board for consideration. Back on May 23rd, the Finance Committee meeting, they reviewed the board compensation and benefits survey that was prepared and provided a recommendation to present it to the full board for discussion and consideration. And that was presented to the full board back on June 4th at the board meeting, and the directors discussed the increasing the rate of pay received by board directors for each day of service by 4.8%. That 4.8% matches the cost of living increase received by employees at staff at Desert Water Agency effective January 1st. And that our current rate is set at $406.12. That 4.8% increase would be $19.49 per day of service, bringing the total rate per day of service to $425.61. According to the California Water Code, staff published notice of public hearing in the Public Record newspaper on June 18th and June 25th to meet the notice requirements. And if adopted today, the ordinance will become effective on October 1st, 2024, which is a minimum of 60 days after the adoption date in accordance with California Water Code, where the rate increase does not increase more than 5% in a calendar year since the operative date of the last adjustment. And that date was September 30th, 2023, which determines that October 1st date. The potential fiscal impact of the 4.8% increase would be approximately $10,400, increasing the projected annual agency-wide director's fee expense from $216,000 to $226,000. Legal counsel has reviewed this report, and staff recommends that, one, the directors open a public hearing to present the report and to receive public testimony and comments. And secondly, following the public hearing, if the board of directors desires to increase the rate of pay received by board directors for each day of service to $425.61, staff recommends that the board adopt ordinance number 78 as presented. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. So with that, I'll open the public hearing. We can hear public testimony and comments at this point in time. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on this matter during this public hearing? Seeing none, I will close public hearing and we can move to discussion by the board, starting with Director Gracia.
I don't have much to say. I just want to remind people that I think everybody on this board has experienced trying to recruit people to run for these seats. And it's not an easy sell to find good, clean, clear-headed candidates to run. And I think, it's important that we keep in mind that, we need to keep up with, if we had fallen behind in the 60s and 70s, we would be at a completely different level. Other districts don't pay as much, but other districts have directors that have other priorities than just sitting on the board, but to use that board position to accomplish things for their own private interests that are, and we don't have that here, not even and it's because of this. And so with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Thank you. Director Bloomer.
My feeling on it is that we're so far above all the other agencies, and I feel like we're well compensated for the job that we do, and I would not be in favor of an increase.
Thank you. Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Yeah, I think we should keep this moving in line with the employee compensation with the cost of living. Rather than have, every 10 years a big bump. I think we should move it along as inflation moves along. So I would be in favor of this change.
Thank you. Vice President Bowman.
I too am in favor of the change and keeping up with the inflationary rate.
Okay. All right. I guess unless there are any other comments, we can move to a vote. Is that correct?
President, I move that we adopt staff recommendation for item 7, which is establishing compensation and reimbursement expenses for directors.
Okay, I have a first on that. Can I have a second, please? I'm looking for a second.
I'll second that.
All right. I have a first from Director Grasha, a second from Secretary Treasurer McKenna. May we have a vote, please?
Director Grasha,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
No.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
No.
Motion passes 3-2.
Thank you. Right, so I guess we can go to the next item, action item 8A. Request adoption of resolution number 1335, calling for the election of directors from Division 4 and 5 of the agency, and adoption of resolution number 1336, notifying the county clerk that candidates will be responsible to pay for the publication of state of qualifications. And that is Assistant Secretary Baca. Thank you.
Thank you, President Ortega. This item is regarding 2 resolutions for the upcoming November 5th election. The first resolution is calling for the election and requesting consolidation with the county. And the second resolution is notifying county clerk that the candidates will be responsible for paying for their candidate statement. The total fiscal impact has been estimated by the County Register of Voters, and that is about $110,000, and that has been included in the current budget. At the time that I wrote this report, I did not have the cost for the candidate statement, but I was just informed that the estimated cost for the candidate statement is $500. Legal counsel has reviewed this report. Staff recommends that the board adopt resolutions 1335 and 1336.
Thank you. Any comments from directors about this action item?
I have a thought that I would like to throw out there on the term in regard to who pays for the statements. At the last Coachella Valley Water Board meeting, they talked about how their agency at one time paid for statements for all candidates. They wanted to keep the bar low, to keep people interested that may be interested in becoming candidates. And, they stopped doing it. I don't know what they're, what caused them to stop. And I don't know of any other agencies that have ever done that. It's, but I think maybe sometime either now or in the future, we might consider lowering the bar to entry for those that might want to run. In some cases, the more people in a race, the better. It spurs discussion. It forces debate. And it is overall generally helpful for the board to go through that process. I think it's easier not to be challenged, of course, but the reality is it's not healthy for a board to, I think about other boards nearby that become stagnant and then possessive of their agency as if it's their own. The director might serve for 30 years and run the place off her kitchen table. And there's no entry allowed for any other, discussion about items that are important to the community unless you become a candidate. So I'm not necessarily proposing that we change it, but I do think it's worthy to consider it. And if I thought it had a chance of passing, I would probably make the motion to do it. But I don't want to take up the time, but I did want to share that thought that it's hard to get people to run for these seats. And it's even harder to get people that are really qualified. You know, a lot of times, well, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Director Bloomer,
No comments.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Yeah, I'm in favor of both resolutions. I don't think we should pay for the candidate statement. It's self-advertising, really. If they can't put down $500, maybe they shouldn't be running. So I know in the last election, my opponent did not file one, and the blank page next to mine, I think was telling. So yeah, let's keep it that the candidate pays. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice President Bowman.
If I understand right, it's the Riverside County electoral that tells us how much the candidate statement is.
Correct. And I believe
That.
that is for the printed candidate statement. I believe you could have one electronic that might be half the cost, but it's all done by the county.
Yeah. That's all.
Okay. All right, I have no comments about this, so,
Move the staff recommendation.
okay, I have a first from Director Gracia. I'll look for the second.
I'll second.
Thank you. First from Director Gracia, second from Director Bloomer. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 8B, request adoption of resolution number 1337, authorizing and approving submission for a U.S. Bureau of Reclamation small-scale water efficiency projects grant. Ms. Lort, thank you.
Good morning, President Ortega, members of the board. I'm actually going to have Ernie, Conservation Specialist 2, do today's presentation. He was responsible for putting together the majority of the grant, and so I would like to see him bring this across the finish line.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, President Ortega and members of the board. We would like to propose that the board adopt Resolution 1337, which would allow Desert Water Agency to apply for federal grant funds through the United States Bureau of Reclamation, specifically the SWEP grant that stands for Small Scale Water Efficiency Programs. The application has a deadline of July 9th, excuse me, of 2024, and it's for a maximum of $100,000. We have applied for this grant in the past in 2022, and it was dedicated towards our grass removal program. And it's been successful. It's been easily implemented also because there's very little overhead in terms of getting a program started. It's already in place. It would just be a matter of applying and getting approved for. So we have applied for it in the past, and we're looking to apply for another $100,000 during this fiscal year 2024, 2025, sorry. This would commit Desert Water Agency to $100,000 of matching funds from its budget. And that is the reason why the application itself calls for the adoption of a resolution. We've had quite a bit of interest and letters of support, 8 to be exact: the City of Palm Springs, Cathedral City, Coachella Valley Water District, Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla Indians, Desert Valley Builders Association, Congressman Ken Calvert, Congressman Raul Ruiz, and U.S. Senator Alex Padilla. And I hope this is reflective of how important this is because it really impacts water supply and water infrastructure here locally, especially as legislation and regulations are being passed in California to help us be more sustainable in terms of how we interact and engage with water today and into the future. This would really place Desert Water Agency in a position to really show that it's doing its part in leveraging its own budget, but also federal grant money in order to benefit the cost payer and our water basin. But thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. We'll start with questions. Mr. Gracia, Director Gracia.
Excellent report. I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Director Bloomer.
I just have one question. The matching funds are already in the budget, correct?
Yes, that is correct. The 100,000 would be part of the budget that was approved for this fiscal year, and that budget is $1 million for the turf removal program.
Okay, perfect. That's my only question. Thanks.
Okay, Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Yeah, I'm strongly in favor of this activity. The less non-functional turf I see out there, the better. I'm just wondering, do we ask Mission Springs for a letter of support on this?
I don't believe so.
Okay, let's do that.
All right, Vice President Bowman.
Nothing from me.
Okay. I have nothing else to add, so looks like we can move to a roll call vote, please. Oh, sorry, a motion first.
I move staff recommendation.
Thank you. I'll look for a second.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. I have a first from Director Gracia and a second from Director Bloomer, and now we can move to a vote.
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8C, request adoption of resolution number 1337, establishing tax rate for fiscal year 2024, 2025. And again, Ms. Sines, this is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. So attached for your review is a copy of Resolution 1338, which certifies to the Riverside County Board of Supervisors the Desert Water Agency ad valorem tax rate for the upcoming 2024-2025 fiscal year. The taxes, which is the state water project tax, are collected and used to meet our financial contractual obligations relating to the state water project. Now, in order to determine the tax rate, we go through an extensive evaluation. And in order to do that, we analyze where did we end up at kind of what's projected at the end of the current fiscal year that we were just in when we were doing the calculations. How much essentially reserves are we going to have from the state water project and also the replenishment assessment charge? And we take that and then project what we anticipate the revenue will be from the agency's replenishment assessment charge available to cover state water project taxes, state water project charges, along with the current and projected increase in property values and its impact on the ad valorem tax revenues. So that's all the revenue side. Then we go forward and we project the expense side or the expenditure side. So that includes all of the expenses related that the RAC can cover, the replenishment assessment charge, the state water project charges, projected state water project reserves to meet those minimum targets that we've set in our reserve policy. And when we have all of those essentially tax uses combined with the associated RAC revenues that can cover that, we have left over what the tax needs to cover. With all this information, we always try to keep in mind the long-term tax rate stability. So as an agency, we've taken the approach that we do not want to increase, decrease year over year. So we want to keep it nice, steady, and stable with the long-term plan of decreasing that tax as we understand that property tax values appreciate. So if our expenditures are not meeting that same rate of appreciation, we are able to bring that tax rate down, which is what we have been doing. The agency's Enabling Act only allows the RAC to include recovery of the state water project charges attributed to the delivery of state water project water. It does not allow the RAC calculation to include the recovery of state water project charges attributed to the availability of state water project water. In other words, it does not allow for the capital charges of the state water project. However, the state water project tax can cover the transportation-related state water project charges the RAC is unable to cover. It would be infeasible to utilize the agency's retail water rate revenue to pay for all of the 2024-2025 state water project expenditures, given that, first of all, a significant portion of that imported water is used by water purveyors other than the Desert Water Agency for delivering to their retail water customers. And secondly, the agency's retail rates and charges for fiscal year 2024-2025 have been calculated in accordance with Article 13D of the California Constitution. The agency also pays this replenishment assessment charge assessed on the production of water from our own wells, which then is transferred into our retail water rate. Therefore, the agency's water rate includes that proportionate share of those RAC-related expenditures as compared to other groundwater producers within the agency's boundaries. Just to kind of give the magnitude of what it would mean if the agency included 100% of the state water project charges on our retail water rate for 2025, the calculation would be that the agency would need to increase its variable rate from $2.59 to approximately $4.84 per 100 cubic feet or per unit of water sold. That's almost doubling the water rate for the retail customers alone, bearing the cost of that supplying imported water to customers of other water purveyors and other third-party pumpers within the agency's boundaries. Through the adoption of this resolution, the Desert Water Agency Board of Directors will fix the tax rate at 7 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, as included already in the 24-25 general fund budget. This is a reduction of 1 cent from 8 cents to 7 cents. And that's a total reduction of about 12.5%. I'd like to direct your attention to attachment number 3. And in this attachment, it is a chart, a graph of our projected water rates. And this is just to give you an idea where we're heading and what our overall plan is over the next 10 years for our tax rate. This projection has been prepared with the best available information at the time of the evaluation during the preparation of our budget. And it's projected forward the unknown components, knowing that things do not always remain the same, costs increase. So we've taken appropriate escalation factors and placed it on those expenditures, along with other expenses that we know are coming down the pipeline. So this is really just to provide you a long-term snapshot of what we're anticipating the rate to be in the coming years, and showing our aim to provide rate stability as well as long-term decreases over time if things are going according to what the projections are. Always knowing that, this is a moving target. We receive updated assessed valuations every year. We receive updated state water project costs every year, and we change our replenishment assessment charge every year. So we adjust this every year to take into account all of those variables. If resolution number 1338 is adopted today, staff will submit a copy to the County Board of Supervisors to be included on their upcoming agenda for adoption. The resolution directs the County Board of Supervisors to levy such tax rate for the 24-25 fiscal year on all taxable property within the agency. Legal counsel has reviewed this resolution and the accompanying staff report. And the fiscal impact, if the Board of Directors fixes a tax rate of 7 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, it will provide $37.4 million in estimated property tax revenue as included in the 24-25 general fund budget. Staff recommends that the board adopt resolution 1338, establishing the tax rate for the 24-25 fiscal year of 7 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. And with that, that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Director Gracia, do you have questions?
I have a couple of questions. Might pivot to Mr. Adele on at least one of these. My understanding from a board meeting at CVWD, and I know it gets tiresome hearing about them, but as I understand it, their tax rate is 1.1. I thought that we had a limit at 1. I don't know if I read that wrong, but as it is, I think we're 30% lower than they are, and we're heading for 40% lower. And I wondered how we can do that and still meet all of our obligations. And if you can expand on that, I'd be grateful, because that's one big giant question that I have.
To my knowledge, the Coachella Valley Water District has their rate set at 11 cents. So yes, that is higher than ours. There is a limit to the tax rate according to, I believe it is, Proposition 13. And that limit is 1% of the value of the property. However, that is general purpose tax. These are additional special taxes that have been approved by the voters that can exceed that amount. So
So-
it is under the discretion of the of the agency to set that rate.
So when I get attacked for having high taxes, I can say we're 40% less than everybody else. I think that's something I wanted to point out. Another question I had on this is, what is the differential between 8 and 7 cents? How much money is that?
I do not have those calculations with me, but I
help
can
you with
follow
that.
you up with that.
If you have a $500,000 property, this reduction will save you $50.
Okay.
As
I
opposed
wanted,
last year
I'm
we
wondering how
saved
much
100.
money we're leaving on the table for our responsibilities with the project, though.
No, no, we're covering
Well,
it. We're covering it.
Right, right. But so did the expenses to play in the realm of the state water project that went up. Their estimate of the tunnel project went up by $2 billion, which is $80 million to us. And as I understand it, that 80 million would come out of this, and we're giving it up. And I don't know how that math works. I've not heard any public agency say we're taking in too much money, except this one. And I just want to make sure that we have what we need when it comes around to us, because we could literally sacrifice our ability to continue operating at the state.
Well, I think we could give Director Sines an opportunity to address that.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the information that we have in this tax rate projections, we have included those tunnel projects already as future potential projects for the state water project. So that is factored in. So, and we also have reserves for this purpose. So us setting our tax rate, we've been heading down this path for quite some time, knowing that there was large projects coming in that were going to be coming into play. So we've taken the long game approach to where we have been establishing our reserves at an adequate level so that we will not have to spike up our rates once those obligations become due. So we have taken that long-term approach, and that has provided us the ability to be able to decrease over time as property values have appreciated. So we are bringing in enough to satisfy our current year obligations. We are funding our reserves as well and anticipating what our needs will be for the long term.
Right. And has it been determined yet? Not sure I'm supposed to talk about this, but are we going to be adding the Sites Reservoir project to our statement? Our
Statement of charges.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, it has not yet been accepted as a project that can appear on the Department of Water Resources Statement of Charges, but that is a path that we are going down. So the anticipation is that it will be included on the Statement of Charges for the State Water Project. And that is what provides the ability for our State Water Project tax to be able to cover.
All right, I trust you, but oh boy, I don't know how you make that math work.
Because she's good at her job.
She did better than high school. Is that what you're saying?
Director Bloomer,
No questions.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Yeah, who doesn't like talking about a tax reduction? I love it. But to answer your question, if we got the bill for Sites Reservoir tomorrow, we could pay it the day after. The money is in reserves. I have to pay tribute to the previous management, the current management, the previous board, current board. The financial position of this agency is very strong. The Delicate Phase project is a more difficult question. It's well out in the future. We don't really know the cost of that. But what our finance director sees on the horizon is taken care of.
All right.
You know, the money is there. And as I said earlier, last year's tax reduction saved a homeowner perhaps $100 a year. This one is another 50. It's $150 compared to 2 years ago. Representing the least affluent part of the district, you know, I think that's huge, great news. And I applaud everybody for this. That's, you know, it's excellent, excellent news. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice President Bowman?
Just a general thought or question. If property values go down, if we all of a sudden hit another recession like 08, 09, how does that impact us?
So if we had another recession such as 08, 09, how that would impact us is in the short term, it would impact the revenues in that current year if the assessed valuations came in less than what we had anticipated. But that is the reason why we have certain subsets of our reserve policy where we have reserves established for that purpose to weather any sort of variation such as that, as well as short-term spikes in the state water project charges. So it goes both ways. So we do have a reserve set aside for that, to weather that, so that we can then, if and when that happens, we can take the year or two to be able to then slowly ramp things up if needed. So of course, we'll take that in. Again, we have reserves sufficient so that we can take the long game on this and we can make slow measured adjustments rather than large hit to our ratepayers in any given year.
Thank you. Very good.
All right, I have nothing else to add, so I will look for a motion to accept Resolution 1338 as presented and as recommended by staff.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 1338.
I second that.
Thank you. First from Director Bloomer, second from Director Grasha. And may we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Grasha,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 8D, request authorization of execute quitclaim terminating easement interest in property owned by Cat City QOZB LP. And I think that's Mr. Tate.
Thank you, President Ortega, members of the board. Cat City QOZB Limited Partnership. The developer for the Grove project requested that the Desert Water Agency terminate an easement within their proposed project. Cat City QOZB owns various lots adjacent to Lot AC as shown in the assessor's parcel map in attachment 1. The developer has requested that the agency vacate the easement over Lot AC. The agency's easement originates from a grant deed recorded in 1926 for water rights, ingress, egress, pipeline ownership, ownership of a well, and various appurtenances used to pump, store, and convey water, shown in attachment 2. The 1926 deed was acquired by the agency through the acquisition of Palm Springs Water Company and Cathedral City Water Company. The deed was granted to Cathedral City Water Company for the purposes of supplying water and maintaining water facilities in downtown Cathedral City. No facilities were installed on Lot AC. The agency will retain ownership of all water and all right to develop water in and upon the property as described in the 1926 deed. In early 2023, Cathedral City Council approved the vacation of Lot AC through resolution in attachment 3 and recorded with Riverside County in attachment 4. To clear title to the land, a quitclaim deed will be required to vacate the easement. The fiscal impact is that Cat City QOZB has paid $700 in an administrative fee for the quitclaim. Director of Science has reviewed this report. Legal counsel's reviewed this report. Staff recommend authorization to execute the quitclaim, terminating the easement interest as depicted in the attached quitclaim. Thank you for your time. Be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Tate?
One, we're relinquishing the right of way. We don't actually own the property. And then I heard you suggest that we're going to retain the water rights, which indicates we own the property. I'm not sure. Could you explain that?
So the original deed had the right of way. It was a very extensive deed. It had the right of way for pipeline, ownership of the water under the property, and pipelines, wells, reservoirs, pumps.
This is a 20-foot wide section. It's just an alley that's 200 foot long, I guess, something like that.
20 feet by 100 feet.
Yeah.
And,
Okay, so we're just relinquishing,
but retaining the water right just in case.
yeah. Okay.
Director Bloomer?
No questions.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna? All right, Vice President Bowman?
None for me.
Okay, none from me, so I'll look for a motion.
Staff
Do-
recommendation.
Okay, yes, thank you. Look for a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you. So we have a first from Director Gracia, second from Director Bloomer. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, we can move to discussion items, starting with 9A, Grass Removal Incentive Program Funding Change. Ms. Lort.
Good morning, President Gracia, members of the board. I also have Clark Elliott, Conservation Manager, here today to assist in the presentation. But before you is a discussion to bring down our turf removal or grass removal program from $3 a square foot to $2 a square foot. By way of background, in the spring of 2021, the governor declared a drought state of emergency in several counties, which then extended to all of California. In July of 2022, DWA increased its turf rebate program from $2 to $3 per square foot to increase participation in the turf removal program. Additionally, in December of 2022, as well as July of 2023, going through 2025, the city of Palm Springs elected to provide an additional incentive, a matching $1, at least for moving forward all the way through June 2025, which brought up for our Palm Springs residents a turf rebate of up to $4 per square foot. The emergency drought declarations were lifted in March of 2023, and our program remained at the $3 per square foot incentive level. As a result of two wet years, we've also reduced the grass removal program budget this fiscal year to $1 million compared to about $3.7 million in fiscal year 23 to 24. So staff is requesting, and for some further direction from the board, that in order to make our turf removal program go further in terms of its funding, to reduce our incentive amount to go back to pre-drought levels of $2 per square foot. As you'll see, we also have a chart that goes through past applications and interest. And additionally, we do think that participation in the program will remain high despite going down to $2 a square foot as a result of compounding regulations that are coming down, the Making Conservation a California Way of Life regulation, as well as the bill or the law now AB 1572, which bans watering of non-functional turf with potable water for our businesses and HOA customers in coming years. Additionally, on page 2, you will see a comparison chart of various rebates for other local agencies within the Coachella Valley and surrounding. As you can see, most are at about $2 per square foot. Most all within the Coachella Valley are now at $2 per square foot. Some of our neighboring agencies are between 2 to 3. Western Municipal can provide up to $6 per square foot for the first 1,000 square feet of turf, and that is through a matching program with Metropolitan Water Agency. And with that, we are open to any questions that you may have, and as mentioned, Conservation Manager Elliott is here as well.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with Director Grasha.
I don't have any questions, but I hope you do.
Okay. Director Bloomer,
No questions. Thank you.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Obviously, I like the program, said that already. I was just wondering, do we have any influence at all with Palm Springs Airport? Because every time I pass by the airport, I see these massive amounts of turf, water everywhere. They seem to do nothing, and in terms of furthering our objectives and reducing water use. So just a question: have we got any influence? Can we do anything?
Sure. So Palm Springs Airport has expressed interest several times in participating in the program. Since I've been here, those projects have not yet reached completion. But we can reach out to them and see if they may be interested in pursuing the program further and hopefully getting their landscaping over there under control.
Additionally, if I may add, as a result of the non-functional turf ban, we have started outreach to both our businesses and HOA customers, letting them know of this like ratchet down enforcement that will be coming. And so we will be reaching out also to Palm Springs Airport in some of our larger areas, as opposed to blanketing them with just a letter. Like, as you mentioned, they have quite a bit of non-functional turf.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Vice President Bowman.
No questions from me.
Okay. I'll just make a few comments to follow up on the question about the airport first. There was, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of years ago, there was a demonstration garden that the agency helped pay for in conjunction with the airport. I don't recall that there was turf at that point. It involved the removal of turf, but there is a demonstration garden near the main terminal. And as was just pointed out a moment ago, at some point, unless the airport suddenly becomes a customer of recycled water, they're going to have to deal with it, whether they want to or not. And I am certainly very sensitive to Secretary Treasurer McKenna's concern, because it's been a concern of mine for a very long time, and not just the airport, but also City Hall and also all the parks, which are also not at this point using recycled water. So if maybe one of you can refresh my memory about when that part of the law comes into play as it relates to government, local governments.
Sure. So that would be the year January 1, 2027 for government agencies that are part of a disadvantaged community. I don't know for sure where Palm Springs would fall. If it is not excuse me, I think I may have had that backwards. So for governments that are not part of a disadvantaged community, that is January 1, 2027. For government agencies that are part of a disadvantaged community, that is January 1, 2031. Hopefully that answered it.
Yeah.
I feel like I got a little unclear.
I'm going to make the leap and assume that Palm Springs International Airport is considered a local government agency. But
It's part of the city of.
it's owned by the city, so I would assume it falls under that category. One way, either it's going to be January 1, 2027 or January 1, 31, I think you said.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
right. So it will be addressed at some point.
Yes.
Other than that, well, I'm actually going to ask for some guidance, I think, from our general counsel. And what I'm getting at is that As a landscape designer that works in this valley and works with a lot and works in within our agency boundaries, and I do have a lot of customers that have taken advantage of this program in the past, and I don't want it to appear that I'm advocating one way or the other that might appear as personally impacting me and my business. So, General Counsel, do you have any feedback or counsel you can give to me as how to proceed with my comments or even my vote participation?
There is an exception called the public generally exception that would allow directors to vote on rates and programs that affect the public generally in the same way. That probably is available, but I'm not entirely sure without checking. And so frankly, probably the safe thing to do would be to recuse yourself and not participate in the vote, just as a precautionary measure.
Thank you. So with that, I will end my comments and we'll look for a motion. Actually, well, we could move it to an action item. So how would that work? Does someone just say, let's move it to an action item and make a motion?
Yeah, you can make a motion to provide staff your recommendation.
I have one more question.
Yes, of course.
So would this apply only to new applications and not to current applications or things that are already have been submitted to the agency?
Yeah, that's correct. So how we've always done funding changes in the past has been that it is effective as of the time of the decision. So that would be the time of your vote. I will be walking back to my phone, checking the time. Applications that come in after that time will be reflective of the funding change if you vote affirmatively.
That's a good question. Thank you. Anything else? Is there a motion?
I move that we adopt staff's recommendation and move this to, I guess, to an action item, then
Mhm.
vote. Is that right?
Oh, actually, you can make a motion as to.
I think there's two motions here required. Is that right?
I don't think so.
I think you can just make it your motion to adopt the request of staff, and that would then lead to a board vote.
Okay. So moved.
Okay. I'll look for a second.
I'll second.
All right. I have a first from Director Gracia, a second from Director Bloomer. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
Aye.
and President Ortega.
Abstain.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right. The next discussion item is 9B, changing Board of Directors meeting start time. Mr. Johnson, please.
Thank you, President Ortega. This is a topic that we've discussed back in January of 2023, and then again in June of this year, board discussed it. The executive committee, we had another discussion as to a time change, and that was to consider moving from an 8 a.m. to a 9 a.m. board meeting time. And the committee wanted to bring it to the full board for a discussion. And at this time, staff recommends that board discuss and to provide staff a guidance as to what time the board would like to start. And if we do change, of course, there's things that staff will have to work at adjusting, of course, our website or any publication that has a 8 o'clock change time. We'll work to make that correction to it. But at this time, it is a board discussion.
Thank you. And before we go to the discussion, just to clarify, it's as with the previous discussion item, we could then decide to, there could be a motion made if we wanted to actually vote on a proposed time change. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So Director Gracia.
Well, it looks like you guys have come up with a time at 9 o'clock, and I'm okay with that. If I was picking without input from others, I would go later in the afternoon. I think we can't, it's harder to roll it back than it is to roll it forward. You know, people get used to an 8 o'clock meeting, but moving it to 9 o'clock, they might have to wait in the parking lot for an hour, but at least they're not an hour late if we were to move it backwards. So, you know, I would personally rather see it after lunch, but that's just me, and I think I'm completely alone on that. So,
Director Bloomer.
I'd like the meeting to remain at 8 AM. And my opinion on it is when we all ran for the board, we knew exactly what time we were going to meet, where you lived, what your commute was going to be. And for me, I have another full-time job that I need to get started as soon as possible after these meetings. So I'm in favor of it remaining at 8 AM.
Okay, thank you. Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Well, speaking personally, I think 9 AM is much, much better for me. We struggle with traffic coming out of Desert Hot Springs in the mornings. Typically, we have to allow 45 minutes to get here because of delays approaching the freeway. And we'd be making it easier for everybody that's in that tailback if the three of us weren't there. So I'm in favor of that.
Okay, thank you. Vice President Bowman.
I think the new normal of after the tropical storm Hillary bringing down so much silt off the mountains, when we get the west winds, which we do get, it shuts down Indian and it shuts down Palm. So I was curious to talk about this, but I am sensitive to you, Director. I'm retired in the sense that I don't have to go to another job after this, and I could see that it would be problematic for you. And I've since adjusted my thought on the process that, you know, you have to get on with your day. I do too, but I don't have to punch a time clock or anything like that. And my day is pretty much open. So, and then we have another director, Paul, you also have a full-time job. So it's a different animal for you guys than for me. So I wouldn't want to cause any more distress in other people's lives or something that would make me easier. And then I think the question I had for staff was, is there a negative impact to staff? You did mention you'd have to change documents and things of that sort, but that's a one-time deal. But
Correct.
would staff feel better if we met earlier or later?
I think staff's opinion would to continue an 8 AM board meeting time.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. I don't have anything further to add than what's already been said on both sides of the conversation. So at this time, if there is a motion to be made, I'll look for that.
I have one more comment.
Oh,
Sorry.
absolutely. Sorry.
I think part of the thinking on the 8 AM meeting, as far as the public goes as well, that if they had to be at work by 9, they would still have an opportunity to attend the meeting at 8 AM. Was also considered in setting that time.
Okay, thank you. Director Grasha.
well, the 8 AM meeting is specifically to obstruct the public's participation from these meetings. That's why it's at 8 AM. If we were going to accommodate the public, we'd start at 6 PM. So with that, I will move that we accept the recommended action that we move the meetings to 9 AM for the convenience of the directors that live in Desert Hot Springs and on multiple occasions have had to break a sweat to get here on time. Thank you.
Okay. I have a first from Director Grasha. I'll look for a second.
I'll second that.
All right. I have a first from Director Grasha, a second from Secretary Treasurer McKenna. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Grasha,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
No,
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman,
No.
President Ortega.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay.
Two.
Thank you. All right, item 10 is the Secretary Treasurer's Report for May 2024. Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Financial highlights for May 2024. The operating fund, sorry, financial highlights for May of 2024. The operating fund received 3.8 million in water sales revenue, $81,000 in recycled water sales revenue, and $443,000 in miscellaneous receipts for Prop 1 Round 2 Integrated Regional Water Management Implementation Grant. We paid out 3.4 million in accounts payable. For year to date, sales are 5% under budget, revenue is 3% under budget, and expenses are 14% under budget. There are 23,601 active potable water accounts, which is an increase of 20. There were 19 water accounts turned off for non-payment in April, which is average for the month, for the year. In the general fund, we received $16.3 million in property taxes, $30,000 in replenishment assessments, and $58,000 in state water project refunds. We paid out $2 million in state water project charges for a total year-to-date $21 million. In the wastewater fund, we received no revenue and paid out $44,000 in accounts payable.
All right, are any questions for the Secretary Treasurer's Report? I actually have a couple. Yeah, put you on the spot. No, I won't. So I'm curious when, just a couple of things just for clarification. Why would we be getting refunds from the state water project?
I'll let you.
Yeah, okay.
So for the state water project, it's unfortunately it's a little complicated in how they have to operate because the way that it is bonded is so how they receive their funding for those capital improvement portions. So they're bonded. And you have to have a steady stream of revenue that is assured in order to do that bonding. But the dedicated stream of revenue is a variable source. So what they do is they charge you up front, they refund you, and then you repay. So it's we pay twice, we get refunded once scenario. And it's just because of how the state water project is bonded and the revenue that is needed in order to assure those payments. And to provide that secure source of revenue on a monthly and annual basis versus how it is actually paid, which is paid from, a lot of it is paid more from a variable component.
And so those refunds, do they go back into reserves?
Yes, they are, they go back into the reserves and they are all used in how the charges were actually paid is all used when projecting future revenue needs.
And also curious why there was no income for wastewater.
No income from wastewater. So the way that wastewater works, we funnel everything through the operating fund, and that's really just because of how we bill our customers. We do not send out two separate bills to our customers. We only send out one. And customers who have a wastewater service through the agency, they have their water and their wastewater, but they make one payment and that gets deposited into the operating fund. And then we take that money and we transfer it over to the wastewater fund. So it's just a timing thing of that transaction. So you'll notice in next month, you're gonna have 2 months that are gonna be recorded because we're gonna record it. And then as well, because it would be the fiscal year end, we would be accruing in that total amount.
Thank you. Right, because this is the May report. Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, so we can move to item 11, which is the general manager's report. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, President Ortega. So the first item we have on a report is our 2023 water quality report that we had to put that together by July 1st of 2024, and we met that deadline. Just some of the highlights in the report, we mentioned that we conducted more than 2,500 tests. There was a letter in there, an article regarding PFAS and Chrome 6. Some of the outreach that was performed was a June water bill insert notifying our customers. We sent out postcards to service addresses that don't receive a water bill so that they would be aware of the report. We had social media and we did some media interviews. We also will mail any hard copy that is requested from a customer. We also have copies in our lobbies that if a customer comes in and requests, we can hand them out. And so that's our consumer confidence report or water quality report. The next item is just an update regarding the Making Water Conservation a California Way of Life. Again, on June 17th, the State Water Board released their 4th draft of Making Water Conservation a California Way of Life. We have reviewed that, and comment period for this draft ended on July 1st. DWA did submit a letter. There is a workshop that the state is holding on July 3rd, and DWA will give verbal comments regarding the proposed changes. The expected new regulation to go in effect will be in January of 2025. And although this may not trigger compliance issues until 2027, we will be required to report. We suspect that the changes that we have requested for this last round, we're hoping that they do make these changes, but it's highly the way it's been going. We believe that they're pretty much set on the regulation on how they like it, but we'll see. The next item is I wanted to give you a highlight or an update on our water deliveries to the valley. And also that includes our hydropower. So as of the end of May, we've delivered just over 64,000 acre feet of water to the whitewater facilities. And that water, most of it has been running through our hydro plant. Since through May, we have produced over or received over $119,000 from Edison from the power produced. We do split that money with CVWD. And wanted to also let the board know that as of yesterday, July 1st, we are now delivering water to the Mission Creek Basin at a flow of 50 CFS. We will have water deliveries for the entire month of July at Mission Creek Basin. That should produce just over 3,000 acre feet of water for the basin. Towards the middle of the month, we will have some more discussions with the Met on their schedules for the remainder of the year. Depending on how that discussion goes, we may continue deliveries over at Mission Creek beyond July. And I'll keep the board posted on that, but it's pretty exciting news to be able to get 3,000 acre feet of water into that basin and potentially more. We are closed on July 4th for observance of the Independence Day. And our pipeline leak or data here. Unfortunately, we had one last leak on Caballeros before we made that tie over, but this is it. So this is the end. The main is now in the ground and tied over. And we hope to never see Avenida Caballeros on this list again. But as you can see, some of the more leaks are on mains that we're currently working on. And that job is going fairly quickly. I think the contractor might only have one more area to work on. That's boarding construction. They're doing a great job for us. And so hopefully Luella, Andreas, and Via Altamira will no longer be on this list in the future. Some of the highlights from the HR managers list. Ms. Hopping, I don't know if there's anything on there that you would like to highlight, but
The one thing we got another grant for wellness this year, and we purchased a year with a app and an online called Wellable. And so we're gonna be doing challenges, and the board, if they want to join us, you're more than welcome to do so. It's we use some of the grant funding to pay for the actual program, and then some for gift cards for rewards for people that win challenges. And we're gonna kick it off hopefully next month. I have a demo, or I have the setup meeting today. And like the challenges can be steps walked, it can be hydration challenge, which we're gonna include in the first part. Because obviously it's getting really, really hot and we want to make sure people are staying hydrated and safe. So we're gonna be doing challenges throughout the year and see how that goes, and maybe keep it going with future grants if we like it. So, and beyond that, we've been doing interviews, and knock on wood, we should be within the next couple weeks with everybody, new people coming on board, we should be fully staffed again. And hopefully it'll stay for a while.
yeah. Thank you, Ms. Hoppy. As far as the general manager's meetings and activities, just some highlights. On the 18th, I did attend our Mission Creek Sub-Basin General Manager's quarterly meeting. That is the meeting that we hold with CVWD and Mission Springs Water District. Did have 4 tribal mediation meetings. And on the 27th, we had our executive committee meeting. And on July 1st, legislative update meeting. And that concludes my report. Answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions for our general manager?
Questions?
No?
Questions?
Okay. No? No?
None for me.
Sure. No? Okay, then we can go on to the next item. 12, directors' reports on meetings and events attended on behalf of the agency. If each board member could state whether they had any meetings outside of those generally scheduled here for the agency itself, or other events they may have attended on behalf of the agency that are compensable. And you could just let us know which meeting and the date and give us a little synopsis of what happened. So we'll start with Director Gracia.
Starting on the 18th, we were here at Desert Water Operations Center for a board meeting. Then on the 20th, the Public Affairs and Conservation Committee meeting here at Desert Water Agency again. And, you know, we talked about some of the things here today that we've been talking about at Conservation, and I think we might see some movement. I don't know how it will be received over the next year or so on the question of the city's situation and their overuse of water in so many areas. Also on the same day, it was the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority meeting. And I forced to miss because a conflicting schedule was the State Water Contractors meeting. I hope to catch that, but they signed off just as I signed on, and I wasn't able to fully get that. Then on the June 25th was the Coachella Valley Water District board meeting. The interesting thing to note, as I mentioned at our last meeting, that I had a suspicion that they were going to go on a legislative end run against the State Department of Water Resources, and they confirmed that at their meeting, that they are having meetings on the Chrome 6 issue with the state legislature. So we'll see a bill apparently that will interfere with our ability to get safe, clean, affordable drinking water to my constituents. And it'll be interesting to see how they phrase that in the public square, because I think it'll come back and bite them hard. So with that, then on the 26th, the Aqua had an event with Southern California Edison on a multitude of electrification issues that not only affect our agency, but our communities in general. And it was a good opportunity because, you know, one of the things that we hear one side of these stories about how one particular electric company is evil because they don't supply enough electricity to build out their community. And, you know, that energy is usually focused toward Imperial Irrigation District, and it comes from special interests. Let's just leave it at that. It turns out that, you know, a learning that there's no electric utility that is in a strong position when it comes to being able to meet future demands on electricity. So whenever you hear somebody say IID is bad because they don't, you know, do certain things, what they're really saying is, let's divert attention away from our own shortcomings. And I'll leave it at that, but there's definitely some special interests running around trying to promote dissension within the political ranks in the Coachella Valley against IID. It's interesting to watch if you have nothing to do. Then we had on the 27th, the annual membership appreciation event for the Desert Valley Business Association, Builders Association. And Director McKenna attended that as well. And we had a fascinating conversation with some people from the solar industry that talked about the challenges that they're facing. You know, I've been trying to develop an better understanding because I know Mission Springs is making an effort to head toward a more solar future. And the presentations that I've heard at their board meetings have not been convincing, although interesting, not convincing. But I think that it's something that as we move forward, it's something that we might, as an agency as well, begin to try to learn as much as we can about it. So any opportunity that I have, I take it to try to get a better understanding of how, if and how the agency would benefit if we went down that road a little more seriously. So then on the June 28th, the Riverside County Water Task Force had a meeting as well. I believe you were in attendance at that, and President Ortega. And so I'll leave it to you to report on that because I know you pay better attention to the fine points of some of those than I do. So I'll leave it for you. Thank you.
All right, Director Bloomer.
I did not attend any events since our last board meeting.
Thank you. Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
I also attended Desert Valley Builders Association. I gate crashed because my RSVP got lost. I find it very interesting. I'm going to come back to the solar question in director's comments. But it was a non-conventional meeting. It was good. I hadn't been to one before, and I'll tell you more in a minute.
All right, thank you. Vice President Bowman.
Yes, on June 26th, I attended the Agua Caliente Water Authority board meeting. What was interesting is they were analyzing their groundwater production fee that we'd be charging per acre foot of their customers. And they had a figure of $103 to $123 that would be needed to cover that. but they settled in on an $89 fee per acre foot. And they're going to be making up the difference with their reserves. I found that very interesting. Didn't understand the why behind that, but that's what popped up. Secondly, they were giving out grants. One is an implementation grant of $15,200 to a Bel Air Greens, and another was a planning grant for the Indian Canyons Golf Resort for $47,200. So a grand total of $62,400 in grants. So it's interesting to watch this agency develop and do some of these things. And they finally then also lastly, they put forth a budget for 2025 that was accepted. And they're going to be dipping into the reserves a little bit in order to make it work, with the hope that the next year budget, they will have other things lined up. I just find it interesting, since I'm on the task force, tried to help get the whole lawsuit settled. And I learned a few things that I'll share in closed session with the rest of our board.
Okay, thank you. So in addition to the Public Affairs and Conservation meeting on June 20th that Director Grosh has already mentioned, and also the Executive Committee meeting on the 27th, last Thursday. And then Director Grosh also did mention the Riverside County Water Task Force, which was about infrastructure and paying for infrastructure, really, I guess is what way to look at it. There was a representative from Met who took up the majority of the time, and talking about the challenges that Met has had in planning, making long-term, in terms of long-term planning for infrastructure and paying for it, when at the same time due mostly to conservation efforts that their revenue streams have decreased, and so the balance of doing the promoting conservation while at the same time reducing water sales and then paying for infrastructure, and the challenges that they faced with that, and some of those same challenges that then get passed on to the member agencies that are also part of the Metropolitan Water District. And then there was a conversation with an academic from UCLA, kind of he had along the same lines of what the gentleman from Met had been saying. I think the thing that kind of the controversial thing that came out of both of those conversations was the possible addressing Proposition 218 and the challenges that the existing proposition has for agencies, any water agency in California, in terms of financing creating revenue streams that can then finance projects, while at the same time not impacting or minimizing the impact to those who may be economically disadvantaged within the areas that are being served. Both gentlemen mentioned that as far as sort of their final point. I'm not sure how realistic that is, but it was interesting that I don't think that they'd actually coordinated their presentations. I think they kind of had come up with a similar conclusion. And then it ended with a sort of a summary, I guess you could say, by a member, one of the staff members from Senator Padilla's office, who has now taken on the mantle of California's water senator since with the passing of Senator Feinstein, and kind of going through the list of the different committees that he's been assigned to, and some of the legislation that he's been sponsoring in terms of dealing with water in a drought-prone West, well, in this case, particularly California. So I found it very, very interesting, and particularly the comments about Proposition 218. And I'll leave it at that. And then yesterday I had my security training for online security, and with that I'll end, and we can move to Item 13, which is director's comments and requests, and I'll start with Director Grasha.
I have no notes, so I must have no comments or questions.
Okay. Director Bloomer,
I don't have anything. Thank you.
thanks. Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
To take up all the time Director Grasha did not use. I want to talk about solar. At the DVBA meeting, there were some solar installers who said that the climate for them was brutal. But I read in my broader perspective, the cost of solar panels, when I put my system in 2016, and I love it, by the way, they were about $4 per watt. And currently they're down to 60 cents per watt. And I likely think, looking at the production capacity of solar panels worldwide, the Chinese alone have 150% capacity above world demand. It's quite likely that solar panels will drop to about 30 cents per watt in the next 2 years. And I think it's time that we as an agency, and this is a big task, I understand, we adopt the same philosophy we have with the aquifer, which is kind of net zero philosophy. Let's do the same with energy. Let's look at the solar potential of all the sites, real estate we have, and look at what we can do to take advantage of these newer, lower cost systems that will be available or are becoming available. There's also a financial engineering aspect to this. There is a 30% federal tax credit, which we can't use. It's always been about to expire, but it has been extended for several years now. And if we were to joint venture with a private company, and I don't have a brother-in-law or cousin in this business, if we were to joint venture with somebody, they may be able to unlock that 30% federal tax credit and make the whole thing much cheaper. If you look at the financial report, I know you do, you'll see that we wrote a check to Edison last month for $305,000, and that's fairly typical. You know, we spend maybe $3 million a year on energy. And we may be on the cusp of an era when, incredible though it may seem, energy becomes cheap. You know, we think of it as expensive, but it falls on our heads 12 hours of the day. So it shouldn't be expensive. I think it's time to look at completely solarizing our energy supply. Every piece of real estate we've got, even at the Mission Creek replenishment facility, we own a lot of real estate on the other side of the road and around that facility. We should look at it. I'd like staff to take a look at the solar potential of the real estate we have, the real estate we could acquire, and whether or not we can feasibly do that. Mission Springs did look at it. They had a project estimate, I think, for a lot of their well sites, about $17 million. They didn't have $17 million lying around. But we do. You know, we have these resources. We have reserves. We may be able to mobilize them in some way to take that money, invest it in solar energy production, reduce our bills, annual bills, by a couple of $1 million. And I think it could be profitable. I think it could be sustainable. I think it's time we took a hard look at it. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice President Bowman.
Yes, I want to thank our general manager for bringing up the Worsley settling ponds, and that water will be going in there. And I know our last meeting, I asked if we could somehow talk with Met and figure out if there is a schedule, or are we just sort of force-fed whatever they tell us, and that we could then include MSWD into that discussion, because they, and like me, I'm curious as to, we get it when we get it, and we have to like it or lump it or whatever it is. And if there's any way of streamlining a schedule or making a schedule work, I think that would be really cool. So I'm glad that you are going to be meeting with them, as you said, and talking about it. And, you know, let them know from a customer's perspective what it's like to all of a sudden be told, here's what you're getting. And maybe that's the only way it works. I don't know. Secondly, I will not be at the July 16th meeting, nor if there is an executive committee meeting on the 25th. I will be attending the Western Water Conference up in Washington and doing a little vacationing before that. So,
okay. Thank you. I don't have any other additional comments or requests. So with that, I believe we can move into closed session. I read 9:30 on the clock. If the directors and senior staff could meet at 9:40 in the boardroom. And thank you to the members of the public who attended today. And we will be back at some point this morning to close out public session. Thank you. All right, shall we restart? Thank you. Welcome back to open session. I can report that we had no actionable items taken during closed session. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting here on July 2nd. Thank you.